Hi, this is Steve Gillmor. Welcome to the Gillmor Gang. Huh? It worked this time. Before I forget, which I did last time, I want to thank our sponsors, Rackspace, and the fabulous people at NewTek who have produced this wonder machine called the TriCaster. This TriCast is one of many that is starting to emerge on the network, and we're pretty excited about the technology and how it's starting to have an effect. Our show today is going to be about, of course, how RSS is dead, but specifically, I love it when Scoble shakes his head like, well, wait a minute, FriendFeed's dead, not Scoble.
It's all dead. Everything's dead.
Exactly. But that's, you have to turn things to oil in order to be able to get the new stuff in, right? So we're going to be talking about the death of email. And to help us with that is Rob Goldman. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks.
Rob
Happy
Goldman,
to be here.
You have a software package called
Threadsy.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about what Threadsy is.
Threadsy is the world's first integrated communications client. So we combine email, Facebook, Twitter, and a bunch of 40 other social services into one integrated UI. So it's sort of a one-stop shop that does more than just sort of aggregate things. It integrates them. So it gives you a kind of a holistic view of not just all of your communication services, but the entire sort of online life of the people with whom you're communicating. Because as sort of things progress, especially as social media and social networks kind of start to displace the place in our lives that we had for email, we're finding the people we communicate with are spread out across a bunch of different services. They got their Twitter accounts, their Facebook accounts, their Flickr accounts, or their Picasa accounts, and they've sort of left traces of themselves all over the social web. So we try to pull those things together so that you get kind of a complete picture of the person that you're talking to.
Okay, and speaking of one-stop shops, Robert Scoble, welcome.
Hey, how are you doing? So I'm trying to get Threadsy loaded, but it's not loading for me today. So. But I've used it quite a bit, and it's a pretty interesting service in that it splices together all your email and social networks into one long feed, which makes it. I find it interesting because I can just put it up on my vertical screen here and just watch the world go by and choose even more stuff to engage with.
Also joining us on the phone are Kevin Marks. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi, Dan.
And Dan Farber of CBS News. Welcome, Dan.
Good afternoon.
And Mike Arrington is not joining us. He's at the Web 2.0 conference. I just saw him a little while ago. But I think this is going to be what the team will be for today's show. So, Dan Farber, just before I forget, we had an interesting conversation last night with Tim Berners-Lee, didn't we?
Yeah, I thought it was good to catch up with him and kind of find out how he's evolving his thinking in regards to the semantic web and Twitter and other things.
So, it was way over my head what he was talking about. We were luckily joined by Nova Spivak of Twine fame, who was translating in both directions, I think. But I think I can characterize one thing about that conversation that I think would be interesting for today's show, which is that there's definitely an interest on the part of Tim around the notion of the pub-sub aspects of Twitter, or not specifically Twitter, but he was talking about Identica, for example, which has the ability to be able to emit or to at least transport RDF, sort of so-called semantic objects. And I'm not a big proponent of RDF, mostly because I don't understand it, and I think that's one of the reasons that I think it's had some trouble in terms of adoption. But clearly, as we get to sort of the intersection of things like pub-sub, hubbub, and these micro messages being carried over a transport that could be integrated and federated, we're getting to the point where there's going to be tremendous opportunity for us to regain control of the micromessage base that we have just been sold down the river by Twitter to Microsoft and Google yesterday. So anybody jump in and comment on what they think about the Twitter moves and what it imports for for the climate of micromessaging. Robert, I want to hear from you first.
I think it's huge because it brings a whole new audience to Twitter. First of all, saying, "Well, I got them another round of hype." I mean, I was listening to ABC News yesterday, and all they were talking about was these two Twitter deals with Microsoft and with Google. But I talked about on my blog yesterday that I see a new place for real-time news like Twitter, because if you go to Google and search on Palo Alto sushi, for instance, and you look at Google, there's a list of restaurants there, but it's very cold. There's nothing there that's live or human. And if Google can figure out how to add in, information from both the restaurants and from users, I think that'll make that list a lot more useful. And that's what I'm hoping to see. Go ahead.
Google also did introduce social search, where they are kind of taking from your friends and adding it to search queries, and something they'll be releasing in the next few weeks. I just wanted to add something about what Tim Berners-Lee was saying about things like Twitter and PubSub, which is, the issue he has with Twitter is the fact that it doesn't have a real URL and doesn't have much metadata with it. And without that, you really can't drop it into the bigger stream to be able to use that content in different ways, more semantic ways.
Right,
well,
but
I can push back on that.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Twitter does have real URLs. Each tweet does have a permalink. It has that structure that inherits.
A short URL, which
the proper link out. Yeah, the links out are bad, and I agree. We debated.
Yeah, it's the links out. It's not that. It's the links out.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's. I think that is a structural flaw. But I push back on Nova and his we need more metadata to go with the data. Well, the thing is with metadata, the distinction between metadata and data is in many cases a mistake, because if the supposed metadata is hidden away from us in some parallel thing we can't see, then it ends up getting out of sync with the real data. And if Twitter shows anything, is that even with 140 characters, we can cram in a lot of intelligent signaling and data about the data by using @, by using hashtags, by using short links, and so on. We've actually come up with a lot of ways of having a very compact discourse that is still human readable and machine readable. And that's the tension between the hyper abstraction of RDF, which is here's an abstraction for how to develop abstraction, and that, as Steve said, that tends to be in tension with people's actual understanding of what's going on. And if you look at what's worked and what hasn't, what's worked is when you're able to when people are able to add data and signaling themselves in useful ways, but the data is not some sort of abstraction that's stuck on the side that people can't see and understand. It's something that is articulated directly to them in a form that works for them. So Scoble's restaurant example, that's things like Foursquare work very well for that, because you're explicitly articulating I'm at this place now, or you're adding a little tip to it saying the fish here is really good, and those stuff show back to other people, and it's not in some sort of gigantic abstraction. It's built in a way that makes sense to you. So I think there's RDF has been the future of the web for a long time, allegedly, and in fact it has not delivered on its promise over the last 10, 15 years. Whereas actually what we have seen is more and more people incorporating richer data into the streams that they're already using, and that's the trend I see improving.
Rob, why don't you jump in here and translate some of this into your view coming from Threadsy?
Well, I mean, I guess I view it a little bit less from the sort of technical perspective of the the pub/sub hub and sort of RDF and the standards, and more just the news yesterday struck me as important practically, for two reasons, and I think they have, indirect impact on what we're doing at Threadsy, but I think a much bigger impact on what's happening with Twitter and sort of short messages in general. I guess the first thing is, I think it points the way for a business model for Twitter. I'm sure there was some. Sounds like we got some interference there.
Sorry about that.
Hello?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it points to, obviously I think there was some revenue involved in both those deals, probably meaningful revenue when you're a company the size of Twitter. And I think more importantly, it sort of presents the sort of Twitter body as a really interesting application for search. And I think to the extent that people interact with tweets and the Twitter database in a search-oriented way, that's a good thing for their sort of long-term revenue prospects, because with search comes intention, and I think the pathway to delivering value for advertisers. And I guess on the other hand, and on the downside, I think for Twitter is it's going to bring a lot more traffic across the tweets, and the fact that people can tweet and find themselves on a landing page on Bing or on Google, I think is going to attract even more spam. And I think they already have a really big problem fighting the spam that's happening inside of Twitter. And I think this is going to make it a lot worse. So when you put this kind of high-powered traffic on something, I think you need a high-power control system to make sure that everyone stays honest, and I'm not sure that's there.
I think it's coming with the invention of the new list feature, but it'll take a while for Google to figure that out, and first of all, it'll take a few more weeks at least before Twitter ships it. But I'm finding that I can dream of searches based on my lists that I've subscribed to, and I've already subscribed to about 100 different lists which cover probably about 90% of the tech industry. You don't have to subscribe to too many lists before you hit almost everybody. And now if I could say search all my lists for something, I would get absolutely no spam.
And do you think that'll be part of the search engine implementation, the kind of keeping it personal?
Not at first, but that's where this is heading. If you talk to the Facebook people, they keep using this word of, we believe it's your friends that really are going to affect everything in your life. And so I would expect, the reason they bought FriendFeed, and that I still have some optimism about FriendFeed, is the guys there understood this search far better than Twitter did, right? We've had this kind of list-based search for quite a while. We could always go to, search Obama, search the word Obama in a title based on Tim O'Reilly, what Tim O'Reilly wrote, or based on what this list of friends that I've set up, or list of people that I've set up. And if they move that to Facebook, and Facebook gets it first, and everybody at Facebook talks like this, so I know they're thinking about internally, what is the impact of your personal friend graph or your personal social graph, and why is that different than some guy you've never ever met before, or is not closely related to you, or closely related to your social graph? I think you're going to see some really interesting things. The interesting thing yesterday on the Google search announcement was that they're using two-level search based on you. So you could, at least that's what they're saying, and I haven't seen the implementation, so I'm going off of what Marissa Mayer was saying on stage, but you could limit the search to only people within 2 levels of you. And keep in mind, for somebody like me, that's a lot of people. I'm following 8,000 people, and each of those people are following, some of them are following hundreds of thousands of people, some of them are following tens of thousands, some of them are following just a few hundred. But if you take 8,000 people multiplied by even, let's say, 200 people, that's a lot of people you can search through, and that search will have very little spam, because I'm adding my personal people I know in the industry and brands I trust in the industry, and that I'm seeing already an alternate universe from the regular Twitter that's being built right in front of me. There's a guy who is one of the top iPhone app developers. He's built a list of all the developers. And so you could just add his list, and all of a sudden you get all the app developers in the world. It's unbelievable what you can do now. And I'm sure Facebook is working on this as well. Everybody's on Facebook. It's just, how are they going to surface that social graph and make it useful? Right now, Twitter. I think Twitter is actually ahead. Most people probably don't think that, but I think with these search deals yesterday, that put them in the lead.
Well, so I watched your walkthrough of the list product the other day, the video you did, and I thought, this is the first I've seen, in actual practice, seeing the list product roll out. And what struck me, which I think is super interesting, is the real power in Twitter. And I think the reason that it had sort of Facebook on its heels for quite a while is that information can move so quickly through it because there's no barrier. There's no limit to the way that the information can move. There's sort of no walls in the system. It's just this giant wave. And if something important happens right near you, you see some armed guy walking into a hotel in Mumbai, that information travels fast. Yeah. And it can't travel quite as fast inside of Facebook because you've got these kind of walls of your friends. In order to take kind of a status update I give and have it move across the sort of broader universe, someone has to kind of appropriate it from me and reshare it sort of explicitly in a way that you don't have to inside
I think
Twitter.
That's overstated. I really do think that's overstated.
Why is that?
I think the speed thing is overstated, yeah.
Yeah, and just the issue of Facebook having this barrier that prevents it from competing head-on in real time with Twitter. I just think that's an artifact of what they've done to get to where they are. It's not, it's not a technical problem.
I totally agree, and I guess what I'm saying is the list launch on the Twitter side is a step kind of in the other direction. It's saying, hey, let's kind of erect some walls to kind of keep the spam out and focus the conversations, and it feels like a different path back down to smaller groups.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that either. I think that that what lists represent is Twitter's attempt at monetizing at an early stage. It's sort of a hybrid between Track, which they continue not to deliver, and which they've now subsidized through Microsoft and Google, and the sort of the client base of people, including you, Rob, who are delivering, a group functionality. What they're trying to do is to sort of copyright the group functionality and make it a data type. And I think that'll be somewhat successful, but the tension will increase on the part of their third-party developers and entrepreneurs who want to access that programmatically over the APIs, at which point, Twitter's differentiation becomes somewhat irrelevant. So I think that it's a short-term way of, as Evan said on stage, boosting their flow again at a point where they're plateauing a bit, and beginning the task of setting up these sort of proprietary data types. And I think they're going to have a hard road ahead of them in terms of what happens when there was a problem that was starting to be talked about yesterday on FriendFeed about the pipe between Twitter items and FriendFeed slowing down, and I basically just asked in the comment thread, I asked Paul and Brett to comment on that, and Brett replied basically saying that there's some. I just spoke with him, so I'm not sure whether he said this in the comments or whether he said this to me, but basically there are a combination of economic or program factors and just some technical issues that they're working through, and that they should be resolved in 4 or 5 days. So let's say that what Robert hopes is going to happen with FriendFeed is that its capabilities are going to be absorbed into Facebook. There's going to come a day pretty soon now where people are going to say, oh, you mean Facebook can get high band, full access to the pump, to the fire hose as a third-party developer, subject, of course, to rate limiting or whatever that is, at the same level as FriendFeed did. I mean, effectively, ownership has already changed hands. So the question is Twitter going to allow that? And if they do, what is their differentiator? I mean, why do lists suddenly become important if anybody, including Microsoft, Google, and third parties aggregating together, if they can all do API access to these list formats, it's open season. Where is their value add there?
Well, so Steve, your take is that they want to box out the client apps by offering some differentiated functionality.
No, I think that Evan was very clear about that, and he's been, where the rubber has always met the road is that whether they've thought that that's what they wanted to do, they've never really felt that they could pull it off, because it would be abandoning the horse that brung them to the party, which is open access. So I don't see how they get around that. And when you do that with somebody like a Facebook, you've got a real problem.
I didn't see that. I think the interesting positioning for me I heard from Evan was he said Twitter's an information network, not a social network. And I think what the goal of lists is to expand on the I'm following people who I'm interested in, as opposed to I'm following people I already know. Whereas Facebook, Cheryl was saying, no, the social is the most important. It's about your friends. So it's still very focused on the friend list. Whereas, Evan has grasped the power of asymmetric following, of being able to follow sources as well as friends, having them mixed together. And that the list is a way of expanding that and making that more straightforward. So that was what I picked up from those two features there.
Yeah, but
and I also think
I think that I think that's posturing on Facebook's part. That's pandering to their audience to say that it's all about social and that it's not about what Twitter's doing. I mean, they can do both.
Right, but Facebook is coming from a different place. They've said, no, we let you control who gets to see this. And
if you say what this is public, if you say what this is public, then you're saying exactly what you're saying when you put something on Twitter.
Right. There's a question of what the default affordance is.
So if there are 50 million public users on Facebook and 50 million public users on Twitter, and those two environments are synchronized, and tools are used like Threadsy to normalize that flow, throw out duplicates, add or keep and retain, and maybe even thread, crosstalk among different services into a. I mean, that's the big problem right now with Facebook. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's where we're going there, and we're going there fast.
Exactly. I mean, the other thing that we had last week was another round of activity streams, standard discussions, and so on, and trying to come up with common ways of expressing all these things so that they're not bound to a particular supplier. And that's with every exception of Twitter, there's a lot of engagement from everyone who's building this space. So I think that's definitely. It's fairly clear to me that that's something that lots of people are interested in making sense of, and coming up with some standardization for that is a way forward.
Scoble?
I'm just playing around with Facebook and Twitter. I think Kevin's right. They're coming at the world from a different place, and that in Facebook I have all my friends. And they're personally added friends, and they're friends who have added me, and I've added them. It's a two-way friendship, right? Now, that's the private part of Facebook. In Facebook pages, you can just follow me without me being involved. But it's hard to, and to use your word of stream splicing. Facebook hasn't yet added stream splicing from pages yet. I can't splice the stream coming off of Oprah's page and splice it together with the stream coming off of Kevin Marsh's
page. But you're
page.
Assuming that I think pages is a broken concept. I don't think that works. I mean, why do I want to differentiate as a user between an activity stream and a so-called promotional stream or whatever pages are supposed to be. It just makes no sense.
Because some things you want to go to your friends, your family, you want privacy on some things. That's why I really like Facebook, right? Because I can have a Facebook where I just have my personal friends, and it's not going to become a public item when I post my baby photos. We're on Twitter,
right, but this is the intersection with email. Email is personal as well.
Yeah.
Right. But, I was supposed to have J.P. Rangaswamy on this show, but the only way that I seem to be able to reach him is by direct messaging on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I ran out of time to do it. So, but, we're moving toward a model, and this is why Rob's on the show today, not to mention the fact that Threadsy is a great product,
right,
is because he's, I'm starting to see stuff that shows up in my so-called inbox that I only subsequently realized it didn't come in email. It came from, say, Facebook, which is your point. So, the user doesn't have to make these decisions each time. If I want to go from here to the store, I've got basically, 2 or 3 alternatives, ways of doing it. I can walk, I can take a bus, or I can drive. Right?
You're talking about inbound there. I'm talking about outbound. If I'm putting a baby photo up, I want it to go to different group than if I put up Google just bought, made a deal with Twitter. I want that to go to the public group where everybody can discuss it. And
you've got a computer. It's not coming from multiple computers. I mean,
right.
It is in effect because you're using your phone or whatever, but you're making a distinction. You're sending a gesture at some point about where you want this data to move to.
Right.
And that is separate.
So Robert,
go ahead.
You're saying, if I'm understanding you right, that you like Facebook better just because the privacy controls there are a little bit more developed?
I actually am a Twitter guy because I live my entire life in public, right? But my wife is on Facebook because she lives her entire life in private. She doesn't want her she talks to her elementary school friends on Facebook, and that's all she does, really. She doesn't want to be a public entity all the time. I love being a public entity. That's why I love Twitter, right? Because the publicness, the way it came about was Twitter was mostly public. Yeah, you can DM me there, but when I'm talking on Twitter, it goes to the public, and everybody can see it and retweet it or comment on it.
But you're making my point for me, which is that as the amount of email that we actually process, other than spam or stuff that we have to read or sort of glance at because we know that it's part of our jobs or whatever.
Yeah.
As that starts to diminish, it starts to be factored into newer form factors like a Facebook or a Twitter when they adopt those tools. Now, Twitter is way behind in terms of email. They've got huge reach because most people are on, Twitter. If there's the nice thing about direct messages is that they're synchronous. In other words, if you want to send something to somebody, the chances are that you have a relationship with them, and there's a reason why you want to. It takes the spam out of the equation in the direct message environment.
DM is different than email because anybody in the world can send me an email.
Anybody in the world can send you a ping that you have to respond to on Facebook as well.
True, but on Twitter's DM, you can't send me a DM unless I'm already following you.
I just said that. So but what I'm saying is that there's the percentage of people that you want to communicate with via a DM that are not in a synchronous relationship with you is small. It's a smaller sample, but it's a lot higher value. So the signal to noise is much higher, and it's easier to be able to do that. And people, there's a lot that's said about differentiating the generations, and that kids today are much more public-facing, and they're less concerned about, as Scott McNeely famously said, getting over the fact that we have no privacy.
Yeah.
I don't think that's about kids. I think that's about all of us who, work and increasingly work and play in this digital realm. The point is that we all endlessly are searching for some sort of simple roll-up of all these services.
Right.
And that, it's why the RSS equation. It's not that RSS is bad. It's just that it's slower. It's for a different environment.
Yeah.
It doesn't have an economic model that's supported in this new real-time environment. And, the best that it can do is to, is to be stable and then slowly lose market share.
Yeah.
This isn't a value proposition. It's just an observation.
Right. I think we're not arguing with each other really, but Facebook today doesn't support what I need to do. Well, for instance, here's my new list of tech news brands, and it has Wall Street Journal and Mac Rumors and TechCrunch and Daring Fireball and Wireless Week. I'm not sure if you can see that too well. But I can't do this very easily on Facebook. I can't just subscribe to brands without having them friend me.
Well, you can do it on FriendFeed, though, right? You've been able to do it on FriendFeed
really,
for longer than you could here.
A lot of these brands aren't on FriendFeed.
And that's
they're not
nonsense,
nice,
because you just pull them in through Twitter.
Yeah, but not really. They're not easily addable, findable like they are here. Now with lists, you don't even need to search for them. You just need to come to my account.
And that's true not just for Twitter. Now they'll be easy to search for on FriendFeed or Facebook. The barrier to entry is just dropping like a stone.
I agree with you in the longer term, but not in the shorter term.
Okay, we're talking 3 months instead of like 2 weeks.
Okay. But they're not there yet. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rob.
Can I ask a question? So, what does everyone think the sort of real motivation behind the Facebook username kind of land grab was? I mean, my take is that was completely about getting you public and sort of providing you with a forum through which you can share information much more broadly than to just your friends.
Yeah, one thing Twitter did really well was that @name. I mean, how did I pimp the show today? I said, follow @Steve Gillmor, and his show is on at one of the, and that @name becomes a link in everybody's tweet deck or Threadsy, or Threadsy makes it a link, right? So you can just click on that @name and go to Steve Gillmor's account. I can't do that really easily yet on Facebook. And the real name was an important way for me to communicate where to go to my friends. Go to facebook.com/Steve Gillmor, or my Scobleizer page. Go to facebook.com/Scobleizer. That was really an important step, but they haven't yet linked it together to make it nice like Twitter has.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I guess I'm with Steve as well, which is I think that'll happen really soon.
Yeah.
Well, I thought
like I said, in the next 6 months, both of these move together, right? And Steve gets Go ahead,
6 months?
Steve.
You really think it's going to be 6 months?
I
mean, the second the lists work and that they stop, fail whaling with it, it will be the day that all of the third parties will start rolling it up and providing value-added services, and then there's going to be a discussion about what is a third-party service. Yeah. Kevin Marks, is Google a third-party service for Twitter now?
Yeah, I think it is. I think Twitter has a very expansive view of this. I've heard that this week from both Doug Bowman and from Ev, which is that they see the multimodality of Twitter as a major feature. The fact that there are lots of different ways of getting at it. I think that's one of the reasons that DMs work is that they route through to SMSs. So it gives you a way of letting people SMS you without being able to phone you, or without having a direct phone number or being something you can route in more than one way. And that does work very well. So I think a lot of this is about multimodality in both directions, and that's sort of, for me, that's a lot of the interesting part of this is connecting these pieces together, and also getting back to it has to be real time. I think it's also getting back to the interplay between immediacy and history, and that's a lot of that is where the interesting bits and pieces of this are coming. Where you've got all this stuff flowing past, but you've also got bits of it you want to keep for later, and bits of it you want to make sense of, and bits of it that will come back, and being able to point out of the instantaneous flow into something broader and gather that is a key part of that too. So we're starting to see the pieces fit together. And I think the difference between the Facebook and the Twitter announcements about search was that Facebook were explicitly not saying that they were letting Google search them. They're still very wary of that.
Yeah.
Well, they were saying that when they released it, that they, I think there's some nuances about what they are saying about interacting with Google. I don't think I think that they have a congenital mistrust or a strategic sort of opposition to Google, which I think is going to go away pretty quickly now that Twitter has basically leveled the playing field between the two major players. Rob, do you agree with that?
I think it's going to be super interesting to see how that plays, because my take is that the Google's kind of worst case scenario, biggest fear is huge amounts of information accumulating in places where they can't organize it. But I mean, their mission is to organize the world's information, and if all of a sudden really important, relevant information to me is starting to pile up in places that they can't see, I think that's a threat to their mission. And I think that was happening in a meaningful way on Facebook, and I think Twitter's kind of public approach is creating a real wedge between what I think Facebook wants to do, which is to try to keep the information proprietary and organize it for you, and what Google wants to do, which is to try to be this kind of thin layer on top of the world's information that makes sense of it. I mean, as long as the information is spread out, I think there's going to be a really important role for people who try to reassemble it. And that's what Threadsy is trying to do. We're trying to do it as a communications tool. And I think that's what Google's trying to do as a search tool. And I think right now the Twitter news this week, I think, is probably causing the Facebook execs to have some long emotional meetings.
Yeah, except that doesn't take into account the FriendFeed acquisition, because if there's anything that FriendFeed is about, it's about this kind of aggregation and the sort of blurring or the normalizing between different data stores. So
yep, I can't wait to hear what FriendFeed's up to. It may be that they're the search team that's going to try to figure out how to surface as much of the information as they can.
Robert, go ahead.
I totally agree. I can't wait to see what Paul is going to show me soon. He's already said he's going to give me an interview and show me something he's working on.
Before he does that, I hope that they deliver stream splicing, which they promised from before the.
Well, that might be what he's showing me, right? Because he has promised one other FriendFeed feature that he was supposedly thinking on for a while, and of course stream splicing was one that he told you that he was working on. So I wouldn't be
that was in the roadmap, so I wouldn't be surprised if the fact that Gary Bird has left the company may or may not have had an effect on that.
Yeah,
either that means it's ready or that it's not happening.
But I think stream splicing is really important for getting Facebook into this new world of giving me one feed of all the things I want to watch. I mean, why are we talking to Threadsy, right? Threadsy is doing stream splicing of email and Facebook and Twitter into one stream that I can watch on my screen. It's very useful. And right now I can't watch Oprah's Facebook page along with TechCrunch's Facebook page and mix them together into one stream that I watch. I can't do that. I can sort of do that with some of these tools, but not easily. Here, here on Twitter, I can just click, add them to a list, and now I have those streams spliced together in a useful and easy to manage way.
Well, you can't splice lists together.
Not lists yet, but you can sort of see where that's going to go.
Right.
I'm guessing. This is a race between both tech teams, right? FriendFeed is going to add things that Twitter can't do easily. I mean, Facebook already has comments. Twitter doesn't have comments, and then people keep complaining. I mean, that's one legitimate thing that we're still doing on FriendFeed. Over here is my FriendFeed window with the Gillmor Gang. I can't do that on Twitter, and I can do that on Facebook to some extent before it rolls off. The problem is I can't find that thing on Facebook again.
The other thing...
I think the bigger question is just, is it going to end up all centralizing in one place? And if it doesn't, what's the role of the integrators who are going to try to connect these things? I mean, if you just look at it in practical terms over the last year, I mean, the number of people using social media and regularly updating their status has just, exploded. It's probably 200 million people have come to this in the last 18 months. With just huge volumes of new content. So you've got lots of new stuff in lots of new places, and the places are opened via API. Like to me, it's just a natural, it's a natural opportunity for integration, and that, that's where we're playing as Threadsy. And I think unless it all centralizes in one place, the people who are trying to make sense of it across your sources are going to have a really important role to play.
So when you say that that's where you play, what do you see as the landmarks for your company in terms of what you're going to try and accomplish next?
Well, I mean, I think it's at a high level, what I can say is our position is a very special sort of privileged spot on top of all of your communication services. And if we want to sort of deserve that position in your life, we have to add value that you couldn't get by going to any one of those services. We're never going to be able to be the best at everything we do. We're not going to be the best email client, the best Twitter client, the best Facebook client, the best social web browser. What we're going to be is the best integrated communications experience. So we're going to try to do things that no single service could ever do. And I think, if you look at great integrators, I think that's what they've done in the past. So Mint is a good, I think, recent example in lots of our minds. They had access to all of your financial accounts, and they gave you things you couldn't get at any one of them, right? Like, for example, your net worth. And so we want to do similarly. We want to integrate all of the people you talk to and all the things you're saying across your services and try to provide value that you wouldn't be able to get anywhere else. And I mean, to Robert's point, maybe that's just splicing streams between Facebook and Twitter. And, who knows, it might look like something much more complicated.
Are you guys working on any curation features? Because once I get everything into streams and I get my system all working really well, and I'm really close to that with Twitter, and I'm still working with that on Facebook. But I assume, let's say Steve's right, in the next 3 months we're going to get all the toys we need to manage our friends and our streams and splice them together and make them usable and make search work, and life will be great. The next step is curation. I want to take all that stuff coming across my stream. I want to pick this little tweet or this little Facebook item and shove it out to my audience and explain why that's important and explain why the person is important who said it.
Yep. So you mentioned this, once before. I mean, so we're very interested in the sharing aspect of your social media kind of command center. And we're thinking a lot about sort of what the best way is to facilitate that. I mean, so far we don't have any meaningful sharing features of our own. We let you, favorite a tweet through Twitter or like a post through Facebook. We're using the underlying services. Yeah. And we've been talking a lot about sort of what we might do to kind of make that happen. There are a lot of good kind of sharing tools that are out there, Postgres and lots of other things. And so, it's on our minds, but it's not at the top of the roadmap right now.
Okay.
What are you using, and what would you like to see?
Hold on a second. Just
go ahead.
Kevin, send video, please. Sorry, Robert. Okay, good. Thanks. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, there's no good tool yet. For instance, here I'm looking at Twitter, right, and I want to share this tweet. My choice is to either retweet it out or click favorite on it, which will put it on my favorite list, or I have to make almost a screen capture of this image, copy the screen capture, and then and put it somewhere like Flickr or something, and then link it in, and then link in everything, which is really over on WordPress or on Postgres or something like that. And then I want to write a blog underneath that tweet. The tweet is the news. It's amazing how much news is breaking in Twitter now. I mean, Marissa Mayer announced the Google deal on Twitter, right?
I saw that, yeah.
And that was the top. That should have been the top item on everybody's blog. Is start there. That's the news. And then we fill in the details or put in more screen captures, or if I met her in the hallway, I'd ask her to demo it for me and record a video. Or how did I find out about FriendFeed's news, right? I was walking around the Alamo in Texas, and I was looking at my tweets come through, and somebody said Twitter or Facebook just bought FriendFeed. Well, I immediately retweeted that out. And then I immediately got on Blog Talk Radio with Paul and the Facebook team and recorded an MP3 file which got put into FriendFeed. But there was no real good way for me to put it all together as one long stream and to keep adding onto it. So as TechCrunch added on an article, or ReadWriteWeb, or or Z, or anybody in the community, as they added more information on, I can't just keep adding on to that item. FriendFeed got really close. That's why I'm still.
What do you mean
excited.
it got really close? It is
FriendFeed does
really
not give me the ability to curate without other people involved. I'm sorry, it doesn't. It does not let me.
I don't know what that means.
I want to write a blog post without you being able to put your comments in between.
Oh, this is the fabulous control of the universe.
Absolutely.
Problem.
Does TechCrunch
As Craig Burton says, get over it.
Write a blog post? Give me a break.
Get over it, Scoble. You're just absolutely not going to happen. How do we have to rerun that show for you to
again?
I think you at the end of that show said okay.
No, I didn't say okay.
Well, so you're back to telling us how are you going to
control
your
WordPress, Steve,
how are you going to control my screen?
Password so I can edit your blog while you're writing it?
It'd be fantastic. Then I wouldn't have to do any more writing.
If you believe that
if you update every day,
there's no
if you
need
as
for
long
control,
as you
just post your WordPress.
You just have to keep a steady flow of content, and I'll give it to you right after the show.
Okay. Just post it in the form. Your password. Just post it there so that we can all.
No, I didn't say I'm going to give it to everybody. I said I'll give it to you.
So you're into control too, huh?
No, I'm into free content.
Okay.
Kevin Marks, what about Google Wave? Do you think that they're a threat to Threadsy? I'll ask you, Rob, in a minute.
Okay. Yeah, potentially in some ways, if in terms of the email side, but the Wave is small group collaboration. That's what its sweet spot is. It's not plugged into the public web in the same way. It has the if you have my Wave address, you can send me stuff issue. So
well, they actually do have a public.
They have this sort of
thing that you can add a public identity, and it's available to everybody who's on Wave.
Right, but it doesn't have.
It's kind of like that other thing that Scoble's so freaked out about, SideWiki.
SideWiki. Well, I ran into Ward Cunningham this week at Web2 Summit, who's the inventor of the wiki. Had a chat about this. And he said Google has two products they call wikis that aren't SideWiki and SearchWiki, and one that is a wiki which they don't call a wiki, which is Wave. So his take was that Wave is a wiki, and it feels very like the first iteration of wiki that he built, where the comments were interleaved with the document you're editing, and then you had to go back and clean them up by hand and so on. So he was seeing it as sort of an evolution of wiki space rather than as an evolution of email.
Well, we were Arrington and I were visited by the Wave team this week. They were sort of giving us an update on what the progress is and so on. And I was sitting next to or behind Steph's machine, and this is just about the time that the Apple announcements broke. I'm going to kill this just for the plane to go by. Hang on a second. And the so it's just her screen is she's got 5,000 waves that she's tracking. I mean, probably not that many, but a lot. And it's what Scoble's talking about. It's kind of what Threadsy starts to look like. It's this, you can see these stories kind of bubbling up and painting themselves at various points on the screen. It's very interactive, and I think too much is made of the interruption problem and people jumping in, as Scoble's talking about, and writing all over your blog. But there is at some point what we're looking for here when we talk about stream splicing. We're talking about what Ajax enabled, which is this the stuff that goes back to what Roet Care was doing with PubSub and opening an HTTP connection back in the peer-to-peer days, and basically painting little bits on the screen that added up to provide an interactive, socially aware reference into what's happening. So this is where we kind of got bogged down with what Robert's concern is, and I think Dave Weiner's as well, about taking over your page. It's not your page anymore. It's the page of the user, and how they orchestrate these bits to be able to provide information. It's not under your control. It's under their control.
I mean, that was, for me, that was the interesting thing about the Google announcement, was the social search, which is saying everyone doesn't have to see the same results page for the same query, which has been true for a little while with local search and national-based result changing and geographic-based result changing. But to say that you now see different results depending on who you've told us your friends are, that's a very important development for Google. And
does that change the economics? I imagine that it's both less of a broad reach and also much more of a targeted, therefore more likely to click kind of audience. So that probably the economics go up.
Well, this is more the search side than the ad side. So the primary value there is that you get better search results. I think selling ads against social stuff has always been harder. But with Google, when you're searching on Google, you're declaring intent. You're saying, I'm looking for X. So drawing that through your friends, it may be a wash on the commercial side. You may actually find that, oh, I'm going through my friends' clicks. That's much more compelling than this broader advertising-based thing that's on the other side. They may see attention that pulls it the other way. But overall, it should provide more useful information for people searching.
I don't understand why people think that search is about, social search is about your friends. It's not about, for me, it's not about what my friends think. It's about
using friends in the
who my friends are interested in and what they think. It's like at least 3 separations removed before you start to get any kind of. I agree. That is what the listing's about. Unfortunately, there's no tools. They're ceding it once again to the third parties to develop all those tools. And once the third party is named Facebook, they're going to have a real problem. Rob?
I mean, so there's a lot there. I guess, well, so starting with Wave, if you want to go back there, my take on Wave is very similar to Kevin's, that it's primarily a collaboration tool. I haven't seen anyone using it in the way you described, Steve, where there's hundreds of conversations kind of percolating. I imagine that's probably only the Wave PMs at this point who have that kind of use pattern for it.
Well, the reason that's relevant is that they're the ones that are designing the product, so they're designing from the perception of somebody who's actually knee deep in the environment. So
sure.
I mean, either they're right and this is going to be a useful paradigm, or they're wrong, in which case we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, my take is that they've done really interesting things with the communication protocol underneath, kind of building these waves and messages together, the ability to kind of see what happens over time, rewind and play back. What I think they're missing is what Threadsy is trying to do, which is pull people together across their services. And Wave, say what you want about what it can do. It can't do that, at least not yet. And I think there's also something kind of important that they're missing in the way that people are sharing content today, which is by and large not through small group collaboration and more in the sort of broadcast model, either the Twitter style or the Facebook style. And I was surprised to see that more or less missing from Wave. It's kind of a very slight extension of the email sharing models as opposed to kind of a wholesale adoption of the new, more sort of social sharing models. And in terms of the way social search is going, I'm with Kevin as well. Again, I think different search results based on who your friends are is more interesting in many cases than searching your friends' stuff. And I think Google's in a very unique position to be able to kind of experiment with that.
And what about you? Are you starting to see synergies? What's your user base right now? I'm sure you're not going to tell me, but
Threadsy user base?
Yeah.
Well, we're still in private beta, and we're not talking about user numbers or anything like that. But I guess what I would say is, if anyone wants to check it out, go to Threadsy.com, sign up for the private beta. We'll send out invites nearly immediately.
I think Google's trying to jam your signal when you give the URL. Say that once more. How do you get there?
www.threadsy.com and sign up for an invite.
So that has to be approved personally by you?
That's the what?
Does that have to be approved personally by you?
Absolutely not. No, we're sending them out to everyone who comes right now.
But you won't tell me how many.
I won't tell you how many. Lots.
And what are your plans in terms of going broader so that people can once they're in the system they can invite people?
Well, so it has been fantastic to talk to these early passionate users and see how they're using the product and what they want from the product, and we are trying to respond as quickly as we can. So we just added last week the ability to talk back to Facebook, so you can now comment back on your Facebook stream and like things directly from Threadsy. We're bringing your wall posts in now, and that was a very frequent request from the users. And we have a bunch more of the sort of top of the list needs that we want to take care of, and then we'll open it up.
Can you pipe Facebook comments out to the broader network?
No, like retweet a Facebook comment, essentially?
Uh-huh.
Not right now.
Is that a violation of the Facebook Connect terms of service?
I think that's a good question. I mean, you can cut and paste and do whatever you want with what's in your stream now. There are limitations about how you can store it on the server side. So, I mean, my sort of quick, off the top of my head answer is it would depend on the implementation.
Well, if it was, a status stream of somebody who is declared themselves the everyone status, in other words, open, it would follow logically that somebody who's commenting on that is essentially deeding that conversation element to the open space.
You would think.
Right.
Yeah, you would think Facebook would be, excited about having that spread.
Well, wouldn't you like that, Robert, if there was some sort of way of being able to I mean, I find these orphaned Facebook conversations incredibly annoying.
Oh, they're horribly annoying.
Yeah.
When you chat in a Facebook conversation, I was just doing that. It disappears, and then you can't get back to it. You can't even search for it. It's ridiculous.
Right. So, what do you think is going to happen there? Is there going to be third parties? I mean, Evan.
No, that's something that Facebook themselves has to solve, and I think that's why they bought FriendFeed. I mean, FriendFeed always let me get back to my old conversations. Every conversation had a permalink. Every conversation was searchable, and I can't do that on Facebook. It's very frustrating. It's one reason I haven't put a lot of effort into Facebook yet. When I do get that, then I'm going to relook at Facebook.
So, Rob, how do you walk up to Facebook data? How do you manage this kind of confusing on-ramp?
You mean how do we integrate it into Threadsy?
Yeah, I mean, you're using Facebook Connect, right?
We're using Connect, and we're being really careful to make sure we're staying in compliance with all their terms of use, and we're trying to give you as much control as we have kind of inside the playing field that they've set for themselves. And, I think there are big limitations on what you can do with Facebook content that don't exist in the case of Twitter content. And I think right now that's a challenge for Facebook.
So in terms of these talkback, you've just enabled the ability to talk back into the Facebook stream, correct?
That's right, and it wasn't like a super straightforward, easy API use case, but it's there now, it's live, and it's working really well. So yeah, you can comment, you can talk back on wall posts, you can comment on things in the stream, you can like things, all of the sort of everyday use cases for Facebook you can do inside Threadsy.
So inside Threadsy, you've got what we're all looking for outside of Threadsy.
I guess you could say it that way. I think you all want it inside Threadsy.
Well,
so what put me off Threadsy was that I go there and it says, give me all your passwords, and it's not using delegated auth at all. And I went to that page and I thought, no, there are better ways of doing this on Twitter.
I saw your comments there. Well, so I mean, we're implementing Twitter OAuth right now, and we implement Facebook Connect. So in the case of the social media services that have sort of developed, password policies with OAuth, we don't know your passwords. We don't want to know your passwords. We just want to do whatever you want us to do with that content. In the case of email, we're kind of stuck in sort of yesterday's, authorization, architecture. And there's basically no way for us to get your email without your password today. And as soon as that's available, we're all for it. I mean, we're not, We're not anxious to take things you don't want to give us. We just want to deliver the service, and right now with email, there's no other way to do it.
I thought there was a feed-based API for email.
I'm sorry?
What did you say, Kevin?
I thought there was a feed-based API for email, but I may be wrong there.
Well, so you can OAuth with Gmail, but you can't get messages. You can just get headers.
Gotcha.
And that doesn't really do it if you want to be an email client.
Robert, you've been following the chat, right?
Yeah.
Any interesting questions that are bubbling up there that you want to put up here?
One was Ken Shepherdson asked, does Facebook still prevent developers from caching data for more than 24 hours? What's the terms of service, the state of the terms of service? We should do a blog post on that, by the way. What's that look like?
Well, that was the Facebook Connect contract, wasn't it? It still is, right? Rob?
Yeah, so it's covered in Connect. You should check the terms. I can't speak to what the current terms are in detail, but what I can say is Threadsy uses the client-side version of the API, so our servers are pretty much out of the loop when it comes to Facebook. It's all happening down on the client.
All right, I just want to walk around the table one more time, and then we're going to wrap this up.
We're not going to talk about Windows 7 or Flickr tags or anything?
Windows? How about Silverlight, huh? Silverlight
Looks pretty
rocks.
good.
Well,
Looks pretty good.
It's getting better all the time.
Flickr People API is good. People UI, people tagging, it's nice. But it does point up the issue that in each of these cases you can only point to a person who's a member of the service. And that makes that more obvious when it's Flickr and with Facebook as well. Suddenly you've got these, and you've got all these like photo tagging things, but they're all bound to the members of a particular service. Being able to bridge across services is going to get more important. That's what I thought was exciting about Threadsy, is potentially you're getting a bundle of different identities for me and correlating them. I think that's a very useful concept. But the fact that you were doing it through give me all your passwords was gave me pause. That said, okay, that's
right. But
I'm not ready to give you the ability to impersonate me on Google yet.
We walk before we run, right?
I promise we won't.
But I mean, the real question.
Throwaway accounts.
I mean, the problem with that Flickr thing, I was sent an email. They've got some new marketing campaign around this new tagging feature, right? And I wasted about half an hour trying to find out what my Yahoo ID is, and gave up for the 10th year in a row.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, Yahoo's 2-week timeout is a really bad idea.
Well, how about a 10-year timeout? When do I get my name back? I mean, I entered it on some email address that I've long since been fired from, and
yeah. Well, that's why you need identity bundles. This is one of the things that FriendFeed got very right, which was when you sign in with your auth Google ID, your auth Facebook ID, and your auth Twitter ID, it wraps them together, and then you can use them again over time. With you can log with anyone, and it'll pull it back together again. Which means that you don't have this problem of, I don't have that email address anymore, because the bundles are wrapped together. And I expect to see more of that over time as well. Yeah.
Well, I'm still. How's that blocking of Scoble going? I blocked Scoble the other day just so we could test out the whether or not that was propagated across lists, and it turns out that it's kind of broken, right?
Somewhat. First of all, I can still go to Steve Gillmor, twitter.com/Steve Gillmor, and I can still obviously see your page, even though.
Yeah, and I can write COBOL too, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be useful.
And I can't. Oh, this user has blocked me from following them, so I can't follow you, and I can't put you on a list because there's no list here because you've blocked me. But if I went to a list that you're listed on, let's see if I can find one that has a small number of people. So this EC Julie Trends has put you on a list.
All right. How do you spell that? I gotta block them too.
No, yeah, I'm not gonna let you do that. And I can see you. You are still. I can still see that you're on this list, and I can still click on you.
Uh-huh.
I just can't I can't automatically,
Okay,
I just have to.
so there's
I
a
have to work
hole
around
there.
Bucks.
But
It's
so
not
the
like
thing-
FriendFeed. On FriendFeed, if you blocked me, I couldn't see you. You wouldn't show up in search.
That's why I mentioned it in the context of what Kevin was talking about.
Right.
FriendFeed really closed the holes in this architecture, and Twitter continues to have these weird side cases.
Well, so the thing that I found wrong with the list stuff in Twitter is that if we make a Gillmor Gang list, it filters out us atting each other. It doesn't show us talking to each other within that list. Whereas, I have a bunch of...
As you know, I don't really consider that to be a limitation.
Yeah, but
since the ad sign, I think, was broken to begin with.
Yeah, but that's a separate debate. The point is they're hiding a chunk of the stuff we say, even if we're talking to each other. So actually,
right. So you have to put a period in, unless you're like me, and you
right.
just take the ad sign off, and everything's fine.
It doesn't work at all. Yeah.
No, it works fine. And when you have clients like Threadsy respecting, doing a lookup on Twitter for a name, a username, and lighting that up, then the @ sign goes away too, and then we're back to 139 characters.
No, but my point is that the way to do what lists on Twitter does at the moment is to make a new account and follow a bunch of people, and then you can use that account as a proxy, and you can share that with other people.
Right. I don't understand that. That's what Scoble says, right?
So that's, if you're using a
to get over the 200 limit or the 500 limit, or what is it?
For what? For numbers, it's 500 officially. Although I found out last night that Twitter can whitelist you into a longer list limit. So we'll talk about that as they
you know what I can't
bugs.
wait for? I can't wait for the suggested user list.
Or it's not suggested anymore. It's the special user list.
Yeah, there are two people on the suggested user list right now: Microsoft and Google.
Yeah, they get the full feed. That's what we all want.
That's right.
We want to be able to suck down that 10 terabytes a day or gigabytes of data a day and
let them eat cake.
Yep.
All right. So, Rob, final thoughts?
No, it's been a great conversation. I mean, my take is that, at a high level, everything we talked about is really kind of part of the kind of logical and expected sort of expansion of innovation as all of this communication stuff is kind of shifting underneath our feet. And it'll be interesting to see how that goes over the next couple of years, and then it'll probably come back together once we kind of have our patterns established and we have kind of winners and losers. So I think right now you're going to see lots of exciting new things, and Threadsy is just kind of one of the voices that are emerging to kind of put these things together.
Robert?
I'm having fun out there looking at all this stuff and playing with it. I don't have too much to say other than I have Windows 7 behind me, so I want to go play with that.
Okay, and you've got FriendFeed in front of you.
FriendFeed, Facebook, Twitter, and a few other things. Threadsy. Yeah, I'm playing with it. I first of all, I can't get in for some reason, even though I deleted the cookies like you suggested, and the UI is still rough. The other problem with you is I'm doing probably somewhere around 80% of my social networking on my iPhone, and it's tough for me to see a role for Threadsy there until you get an iPhone client.
Oh yeah, so you're not the first person to have said that. We're thinking a lot about that.
And what about support for FriendFeed?
Threadsy support for FriendFeed?
Uh-huh.
Probably will happen first with RSS.
How do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, all the FriendFeed search and lots of the FriendFeed stuff is just available via RSS, so it's just the easiest path in, I think.
What's the delta in terms of delay?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question.
Uh-huh. So you haven't explored SUP or PubSub Hubbub?
Well, we looked at it, but not seriously yet. We just have too much on the plate.
So you don't see yourself as competitive with them?
No, I think it's an enabling technology that we could integrate and should. Mm-hmm. Especially once there's some consensus.
So you might wait until some of those features surface in Facebook.
Yeah, I'm curious. I think we're all, waiting with bated breath to see what happens to FriendFeed.
Well, the reason I ask you is that if you do come up with an iPhone client, there's a hole you could drive a truck through for a decent FriendFeed iPhone client. So you could solve a number of problems with a single shot.
Huh.
Okay.
I'm making notes.
So, I want to. Have you looked at the activity stream stuff yet? That's my other push over to Threadsy. Is the activity stream spec is designed to do this kind of interoperation and has a chunk of interesting stuff in it already. It's already got MySpace, Facebook, Netflix, and a bunch of others who are outputting stuff in that format. So I think that would make sense for you to look at that. That may give you a way to do a sort of feed-based integration that you can then use in several places.
Okay, we'll look. We'll take a look.
Cool.
All right, this is Steve Gillmor. This has been the Gillmor Gang. I want to thank everybody who showed up. Robert Scoble, Rob Goldman, Kevin Marks, a brief appearance from Dan Farber, driving my director crazy. I never get this right. Again, I want to thank Rackspace for sponsoring the Gillmor Gang Live on building43.com. And this TriCast is brought to you in conjunction with NewTek. And I want to thank everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.